And the first one is on limiting beliefs. The question I received is from the response of a client during the pre-talk questions and throughout the next several questions. I recognized what I thought to be 4 pretty big limiting beliefs and made note of them in my notes. In your online videos, I only noticed 1 limiting belief demonstrated. What if there is a whole bunch? So what if the client names several? Okay, so with limiting beliefs, what actually usually happens, hey Rowan, how are you? You're going to learn all of this in December. Hey Joanne, I'm very excited because my final retreat of the year is going to be in December 8th, 9th, 10th, 3-day retreat in Surfers Paradise, where I have a fully booked event, and I'm so excited in the beautiful Mantra Legends in Surfers Paradise. And I just brought that up because Rowan's going to be there. So excited, Rowan. I'm going to take you through all of this stuff, all these things that I keep talking about every Top Tips Thursday. You will get the lowdown in Surfers Paradise in December in a beautiful setting. I can't wait. So let's get back to it. Okay, let's answer your questions. Hey Joanne, hey beautiful. How come you're not coming in December to my retreat? You would love it. You would seriously love it. Okay, so this is the question from Sally. So I've got one question from Sally. She's saying, so what if people have a whole heap of limiting beliefs and not just one? And that is usually the case. So when people first start to see you at the very beginning of their program, they usually have more than one limiting belief about themselves. And as therapists, we can easily pick that up as to what a limiting belief is. But the clients themselves, they don't realize that their beliefs are limiting because they think they are facts. That's the thing with limiting beliefs, hey Rebecca, is that they don't recognize that they're limiting. They think that this is really true about themselves. Dana says, had such a great time at the Mantra. Yeah, and it's going to be even better, Dana, because it's going to be 3 days. So you've got an opportunity coming your way, Dana, in your inbox about the Advanced Therapist course next May, which means you get to do the beginners for free again, and then you do the advanced if you want to do it. So let's get on to answering the questions. So I'm going to start again. When people first come to see you at the beginning of the program, they have a whole raft of limiting beliefs. And as you work through the negative emotions and you work through the program, the limiting beliefs will by themselves start to drop off. And so things that they used to believe about themselves, they no longer believe about themselves by the end of the program because they're feeling better, they're feeling more empowered, they're feeling stronger. They change their whole perspective of themselves. And so how you check that is, because you have them all listed, you basically need to ask them, is this still true? So what you need to do is basically at the end of their negative emotions, and just before you start removing the limiting beliefs, you have a whole heap of limiting beliefs. And so you say, Rebecca, you know, this is what you once believed about yourself. You believe that you were lazy. Is this still true? You believe that you were not a morning person. Is this still true? You believe that you can't attract love to your life. Is this still true? So if they still think it's true, then it means it's a limiting belief you still need to deal with. If they say, no, I don't believe that anymore, which is quite possible by the end of their program, then of course, you don't do that. So that's the first point. The first point is that clients arrive with a whole heap of limiting beliefs at the beginning of their program. By the time you get to that part of the program that you deal with limiting beliefs, most of them have dropped off by themselves. That's why you handle limiting beliefs at the end of the program and not at the beginning, because they will just drop off. As people release negative emotions throughout the program and they feel more empowered and stronger and they step into their own sense of self and who they are, those limiting beliefs will just automatically drop off by themselves. Now, most of them do, but not all of them do, okay? And so your checking mechanism is at the beginning of the limiting belief session, you give a pre-talk about what limiting beliefs are. Those who have done my program, you can be reminded of that by reviewing the online version of the program as to exactly what I say about that. And then with the ones that are left, you do those. Now, usually, but not always, because there's always exceptions, the limiting belief, I am not good enough, is usually one that still needs to be dealt with. So, with that particular limiting belief, then you do that. So the question here that I have is, what about if clients still have a number of limiting beliefs that need to be dealt with? You know, in the online program that I gave, I only demonstrated one. But yes, you do all of them separately. So unlike negative emotions where, for instance, you remove all of the anger related to all different events on the client's timeline, with limiting beliefs, you do one at a time. So you can't do multiple limiting beliefs on the one timeline. You have to do the whole process for that one limiting belief, bring them back to now after you've tested it, and to make sure that it's gone, then you go and do the next one, and then you go and do the next one. So you may do a number in the one session. So I hope that's answered your question. You have to do every single limiting belief, not just one. Hey Tanya, congratulations on your fantastic results. I'm so happy that you posted that on Facebook yesterday. What's Rebecca saying? Helen, I was just thinking of you. Oh, thank you. And wondering, would you consider online tickets for the meetups? That's a very good point. Rebecca, I will consider that. So, good point. And hello to Philip. Good to see you, Philip. Where have you been lately? We've missed you at our meetups. You're missing. You need to come on the 4th of December. We have an international speaker. So, see you then. All right. So, that's answering the question about limiting beliefs. Now, let's move on to some more questions. Right. Okay. So, I have got a question here about resistant clients I have got a number of questions to go through still. 6 more questions, so let's get through them. Tanya's saying, hey gorgeous, miss you, need to catch up. Really, really, really miss you. Need to give you a big hug. All right, so question number 2. What do you do when the client is really resistant and the inductions don't seem to work? What might I be doing wrong? Okay, if the client is really resistant and the inductions don't seem to work, so there's 2 different issues there. So the first thing is if you're feeling that the client is resistant, I would have a bit of a pre-talk first, you know, before you do anything. So what's going on for you? How are you feeling? And, you know, talk about that resistance. So have a little bit of a pre-talk about that. Now, the second part of that question is, what about if the inductions don't seem to work? So this particular hypnotherapist, she has said that she's been doing work with a client, but the client doesn't seem to be in trance. So if the client is not in trance, then you do need to do a different type of induction. So what I would recommend that you do is a rapid or an instant induction in that situation, as well as you know, the Elman induction or anything else. So make sure that you put them down. And so, you know, for highly resistant clients, rapids and instants are really, really good. If you don't know how to do them, all you need to do is Google them and you'll find out how to do them. So what am I talking about here? I'm talking about things like hand to face. So, you know, where you have the client look at their hand and focus on a point in the middle of their hand. And as they're focusing on that point, one of those fingers, but not the thumb, is going to give a small twitch to let them know that they're ready for their subconscious mind to do the work that needs to be done. And then as they're looking at that spot, almost like they're daydreaming all the way through it, the hand is getting closer and closer and closer. And as that hand touches that face, the eyes are just going to automatically just drop down. Now, anything like that, or a hand pull or a finger pull or anything like that, is really, really, really powerful in terms of the client feeling the change. So with clients who don't seem to be going into trance, you need to make sure that you give them some convincers first. So suggestibility tests like the dictionary and balloon test, the magnet, you know, in terms of with the fingers and the magnet. So all those sort of suggestibility tests act as convincers. So before you put them into trance for the very, very first time, you do need to make sure that you actually convince them that this works. And so that kind of stuff convinces the client that they're about to do something that is going to take them to a different place. And so then following that up with an instant induction or a rapid induction will put them into a place where they need to go to. So what I would suggest is that if your client is not in trance and if they're too in their head, then you need to put them into trance. So, you know, Google instant inductions, rapid inductions, and we must as hypnotherapists use those techniques. Way too many hypnotherapists, you know, rely on relaxation. They rely on, you know, Elman is fantastic. You know, Elman is one of my favorite inductions. I absolutely love Elman, but you know, it's not enough in all situations. Okay, it's not enough. It's a great backup. It's fantastic to use, and it's certainly a great induction to use down the track at any time. But if your client is not going into trance, you need to make sure that you hypnotize them. So you must do a rapid or an instant to make sure that you get them in that place where they need to go to. Okay, so that's what I would recommend. Now, for that particular person in America who asked about that, I really recommend William Mitchell's courses on how to do those sort of techniques in the United States, in St. Louis. He is brilliant, absolutely brilliant in helping you with those sort of hypnotic techniques. All right, number three, answering question number 3. Is there an order to pick which limiting belief you go with first? I would just pick the one that is most important first. So that seems to be the most important. Sometimes I would just ask the client, which one do you want to do first? So these are your limiting beliefs that we need to deal with. Which one do you want to do first? So there is no particular order, I guess, is the answer. As long as you do them all, there is no particular order as to which limiting belief you do first. All right, question number 4. What do you do if you ask round and round and around for positive learnings and they just don't have any? Or if they say very little, how long do you wait? Okay, so if they're not, so this is where you're doing timeline therapy and you're asking for their positive learnings and they don't seem to be having any. How long do you wait? So really you just need to reframe. You need to sort of guess as to where the client, well not guess, but really be intuitive in terms of where the client's at. Sometimes you can tell that even though they're taking a long time, they're actually processing that information. Other times you can tell that they're struggling with that question. So use your intuition and see where the client's at. Some clients take a little bit longer to say their positive learnings simply because that's the way their mind is working. I know that with myself, when I'm in hypnosis, I actually take quite a while to respond to the therapist. It doesn't mean that I'm not there, it just means that I take a little longer. However, if you feel like they are in that process of about to say something, then just let them, just give them that space to say something. Because one of the mistakes that I see, well not mistake, but inexperience that I see people who are practicing is that, you know, you're too quick to ask questions. So allow the client the opportunity and the space to process what's been asked and to come up with an answer. Don't be too quick to say, so what's the positive learning? You know, you need to just slow it down to get the response that you need. Now, if they are struggling with giving you a positive learning, then you need to do reframes, okay? You need to do reframes in terms of, you know, what else is there to learn about that? And, you know, change your wording in a different way and continually reframe it so that you could get the response that you need. What do you do when you get responses that indicate that the client might not be in a trance and they might be thinking too much. Okay, so that's really the same question that I answered before, which is you need to make sure that they are actually in a trance. Okay, that's the very, very, very first thing. There's no point doing work if they're too conscious. Okay, I remember there was a situation in the United States when I was holding my retreat, and you know, as I was going around watching the couples practice, the people practicing with each other, that it was clear that one of the participants was too conscious because he was making jokes as his eyes were closed. You know, when you're in trance, you don't make jokes. You just simply don't do that. So if they're too conscious because they're twitching too much, you know, because you can just tell from their demeanor that they're not in the right space, then you need to put them deeper. You need to use all the techniques that you have learned to put them deeper. If you don't know how to put them deeper, then you need to go to a course and learn how to put clients deeper, because they need to be deep enough, okay? So that needs to happen. What do you do when you ask a variety of questions in parts therapy like I did, and at no time does the client ever get to anything close to the words? Okay, so this is a situation, hey Victoria, good to see you, beautiful woman, fellow founder. Victoria's in my little mastermind group that I'm part of. I'm very honoured to be in. I adore her. She's all about law of attraction lately. So what this question is, it's about panic attacks, okay? So let's talk panic attacks. This particular client that I've just read about, somebody from the United States has sent me a question where she said that a client came to her because she had panic attacks. And if you are on this call, wherever you are, tell me where you're from. Write the state that you're from. Whereabouts in the world are you? I'm very, very interested to find out. Where are you? I know Victoria's from Arizona, but write Arizona, Victoria. And where else is everybody else from? I want to know. So, panic attacks. Now, panic attacks, I would say, is one of my specialties, because the kind of clients that we attract here at HypnoFit tend to be depressed, anxious people who want to lose weight. And many of those anxious people, you know, have got panic attacks. So the thing with anxiety is, because it starts with anxiety. So panic attacks start with anxiety. So Trina is from Western Australia. Woohoo! Victoria from Arizona. Tell us where you're from. Put your comments there. Where are you from, everybody? Come on, put a state. Let's see how diverse this group is. So panic attacks, let's talk about them. Rowan's saying, looking good. Thank you, Rowan. I'm feeling good, actually. Feeling really good, because I love doing this sort of stuff. You got to love doing you got to do what you love doing, and then that gives you energy and vitality. So, panic attacks start with anxiety. What is anxiety? Anxiety is imagining something going wrong, okay? That's all it is. People make it like it's this huge, you know, disorder, when really what anxiety is imagining something going wrong. Now, people that are really good at imagining something going wrong, because I used to be really good at that. I used to be an expert at imagining something going wrong. So when you do that a lot, when you practice anxiety a lot, and your body is very used to going into that freeze, flight or fight response where the digestive system stops working, your blood rushes to your hands and to your feet, and you're ready to freeze, fight or flight, but there is no danger because you've just imagined it, then all that adrenaline stays in your body and you end up having a physical response. Sometimes what happens when you practice anxiety enough, and when you do anxiety enough, is that it ends up turning into a panic attack. So panic attacks, when you experience a panic attack for the first time, I don't know if any of you have experienced a panic attack, but when I used to be highly anxious before I was a hypnotherapist, I had a couple, and you literally feel like you're having a heart attack. So you literally feel like you're dying. So the first time is a very, very, very scary experience. And they present themselves in many ways. your whole body might freeze, like literally freeze, where you can't move at all. You can't move, or you can't breathe. There are so many really awful, debilitating symptoms with panic attacks. Now, this is the thing that happens with panic attacks. Once you have your first panic attack, then you actually get panicked about having another panic attack. So it then becomes this little cycle where the panic is about having a panic attack. So you're worried about getting into a public space and having a panic attack in front of people because you're worried about being out of control. Victoria's saying, horrible, 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 scary experiences. Yes, they really, really are. So the question that I got here from a hypnotherapist in the United States is that she had a client who is experiencing panic attacks. Hey Tree, how are you? And this was impacting her life so much that her boyfriend is at the point of leaving her. And so this particular client was so caught up in her life being controlled by panic attacks that she seemed very resistant to the whole process that the hypnotherapist was doing. So this is what you need to do. You need to make sure that your clients understand the process and the program that you're doing. So with my program, it is a structured system where you don't deal with panic attacks in the first session. Let's just talk about panic attacks because this is an area that I am an expert in. Most of our clients that come here, you know, are highly anxious people, and many of those clients have experienced panic attacks, and myself included. I used to be a person who was a highly anxious person, and I had 2 instances in my life where I had panic attacks, and they can be very, very scary. So let's just go back to the basics, and then I'm going to talk about how you actually help your clients with that. Sorry, Trina, I don't know what happened. He just left me. All right, so let's just go back to panic attacks. What are panic attacks? Panic attacks start with anxiety. What is anxiety? Anxiety is imagining something going wrong. And so when you're imagining something going wrong, you put that image in your brain and your subconscious mind of something going wrong. And so what does your subconscious mind think? Your subconscious mind thinks that that is actually happening right now. Because when we put a picture in our subconscious mind, it thinks it's real. It doesn't realize that you're imagining it. And so therefore, because your subconscious mind thinks that you're in immediate danger, it goes into that freeze, flight, or fight response, and you have a physical reaction. So it is real. It's not, you know, a pretend feeling. You actually have a feeling whereby your blood rushes to your hands and your feet, your digestive system stops working, and your body is ready to freeze, flight, or fight. And there's a whole lot of adrenaline happening in the body. There's a physical response. There's nowhere for that adrenaline to go because there is no danger. We've just imagined it. There's absolutely no danger. And so then what happens is we're having a physical reaction. We have heat at the back of our neck, clammy hands lots of times. We can't breathe properly. Sometimes we freeze completely. So there's all sorts of physical symptoms that happen. So it's really important that we explain that pre-talk to our client. So for those of you who have done my ultimate hypnotherapist system, you have that explanation in detail as to what you say to clients, because you need to let them know that they're creating this, but it is a physical and actual response, so that your body is having that physical response. So what actually happens when you do anxiety enough, and you know, when you do something again and again and again and again and again, you become very good at it. I used to be an expert at doing anxiety. I used to be very, very good at it. And so when you do that enough, you end up having a situation where you might have a panic attack. So this particular question that I got here from a hypnotherapist in the United States, her client went to her because she had a panic attack. Not just one, she had many, and it was controlling her life. She was at the point where her boyfriend was ready to leave her because he couldn't deal with the situation of panic attacks anymore. So it was at this point that the client went to the hypnotherapist and said, you need to help me with my panic attacks. And now what was happening was the hypnotherapist was taking her through a program and the panic attacks were still there. And I think what was happening is that the client was becoming a bit frustrated that she wasn't getting help for the issue that she went for. So it's really important, guys, that we over-deliver our clients' expectations. So if they've come to us specifically for us to deal with panic attacks, we need to explain to the client right from the outset as to what the process is so that they understand that this will be dealt with, okay? We are going to be dealing with your panic attacks, but it's not going to happen in the first session. There's a lot of things that we need to do first in order to get there, okay? So it is a process, it is a program of work. We are going to get there. I promise you that we are going to deal with this. This is something I do all the time. So you need to explain that to your clients so that they don't think that you're doing some sort of other work when they've come for panic attacks. Does that make sense? We have to make sure that we keep them happy all the time by constantly communicating to them that we will be dealing with their issue. So with my particular program, in the first session, there's a whole heap of questions that we answer, then we get rid of the negative emotions, and then we deal with the limiting beliefs afterwards. So we need to make sure that we give them the skills and techniques that they can actually do in between sessions to help them with the anxiety and so on. So with panic attacks, how do you deal with panic attacks? First of all, because panic attacks start with anxiety, we have to deal with anxiety, but with all anxiety, we have to deal with fear first. So fear of the past is crucial, okay? You have to deal with the fear of the past. You can't deal with fear of the future until you've dealt with fear of the past. So you need to regress them back in time to get rid of the fear of the past first. And then we deal with the anxiety, which is fear of the future. And then you deal with the panic attacks. So with panic attacks themselves, so after you've eliminated the fear of the past, after you've given them the techniques and resources as to how to deal with anxiety, then you put them in a deep trance in terms of helping them deal with the panic attacks themselves. So what I tend to do in trance with panic attacks is first of all, you would have found out from the client as to all the symptoms of panic attacks, all the different symptoms. You know, people are different. So some people might have clammy hands, others don't. So you would say, what do you feel in the body when you're actually experiencing a panic attack? Most people experience this shortness of breath, this, I can't breathe. You know, other people experience like heat at the back of their neck. Other people experience clammy hands. Other people experience like goosebumps going all the way through their body. Other people just freeze. So you need to find out what their specific symptoms are in your pre-talk before you have deep trance. Once you've put the client into deep trance, then what you do is you bring back the symptoms of that they're experiencing in a safe environment, of course. You bring them back to a point where they can just manage it. You might then increase it and then you decrease it. So what that shows them is that they have control over it. Pretty much the way that we handle pain. Pretty similar to the way that you handle pain. So that they know that they have the power to turn it on, therefore they've got the power to turn it off. So what do you do with those symptoms? You get them to use the power of their imagination to reduce those symptoms. So if their heartbeat is going too fast, then you just get that heartbeat to slow down. And it might be, if they're auditory, it could be that the music that they're suddenly listening to is no longer fast-paced music, but it's slower music. So if they're kinesthetic, it could be that they're just feeling that getting slower and slower and slower. So using, if they're feeling heat at the back of their neck, it could be that they feel this breeze come through their neck and just cool them down. So if they're feeling like their palms are clammy, it could be that they're feeling like there is some snow in their hands that are just cooling them down. So what they will then realize is that all those symptoms are reducing and evaporating. And so therefore, in trance, what you've done is you've helped them control the symptoms of a panic attack. So as they realize that they're in control of those symptoms, then they won't be scared of actually having a panic attack. Because the problem with panic attacks is once they've had one panic attack, the fear that people have and experience is that they will have another one. So it's a self-perpetuating thing which gets worse and worse and worse, because the fear is I'm going to be in a public place and I'm going to be out of control and I'm going to be embarrassed and humiliated. That's the fear. So what you need to do is you need to show them in trance that they are in control of their body and that they can be in control of all aspects of their body. So to answer your question from this anonymous hypnotherapist in the United States, to answer your question, your client is resistant because she's feeling as if you're not dealing with the issue. So you need to make sure that you talk her through that throughout the program, letting her know this is what we need to do this first because. We need to do this then because, so that they understand that you've got them and that you're managing them and that there is a system and a structure to why you're doing the things the order that you're doing them. And that the reason you're doing it this way is so that you have long-term success. Oh, I got some love hearts. Love hearts. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much. I love hearts. Nothing makes me more happy than receiving love hearts. Thank you. Thanks heaps. So, okay. So be very clear with that when a client comes to see you for something, make sure that they understand the madness that you're actually taking them through, that there's a purpose to that madness, okay? That there is a system, there's a structure, that you've got them and that this works, okay? They need to know that you actually are so confident that you are going to help them overcome their issue, because confidence is key. So panic attacks, let's go over that again. Remove the fear from the past, anxiety of the future. You must do a deep trance for panic attacks and, preferably record that as an audio so they can listen to that at home. And then, because what the question was about limiting beliefs about panic attacks, once they know they've got it, then they won't have a limiting belief about it. And then you deal with it as well. Okay, so I hope that's answered your question. Next question. Okay, so the next question said, I had a brief talk with the client at the end of the session to get a sense for what she was feeling, and I found out that her boyfriend had just given her an ultimatum to get better or he's leaving at the end of the month. She's convinced that he is leaving and she'll never get better. All right. So it's interesting that you found that out at the end of the session. It was probably better that you would have found that out at the beginning of the session. So what I do in terms of the structure of my client sessions is that right at the very beginning of the session, you very quickly, first of all, the way I structure my sessions and the way I teach my hypnotherapists to structure their sessions is first of all ask them about their tasks that you've given them during the week. Secondly, how their week was. So you would find that out right at the beginning of the session. Perhaps give them a resource or a technique to help them with that, and then get straight into your work, into your hypnosis work. Okay, so with that fear that particular client has of getting dumped, if that client is feeling so fearful that her boyfriend is going to dump her and is at that point where she's out of her depth in terms of responding to the session, so maybe when a client is going through a particular trauma at that particular time, then you really need to get to the bottom of what they are feeling and what they're gaining from that experience, because once you put them into trance, they have a different perspective, okay? So it all goes back to making sure that your clients are hypnotized. It all goes back down to a few points: making sure that you have the appropriate pre-talk, making sure that your client feels that they are being managed, making sure that your client is in trance, and making sure that they know that you have the confidence to deal with their situation. So I hope that's helpful.